Okay, so today we're going to be making a homemade white bread. To start off with, I will be doubling this recipe. Normally it makes 2 loaves, but today it's going to be making 4 loaves. So to start with, I have 4 cups of water. It's a lukewarm temperature, like 90 degrees. That'll keep your yeast activated. In this bowl, I have 2.5 tablespoons of active dry yeast. And then we are also going to add in 1/2 cup of sugar. And this is a 4th cup, so I have to do it twice. We're gonna give this a mix just until all the yeast is broke down, and then we're gonna let that sit for 5 minutes to bloom. So, whoops. All right, so now that that is mixed up, I'm gonna set that to the side for right now and work on getting my dry ingredients mixed in my giant mixing bowl. So since I am doubling my recipe, normally it calls for 4 to 5 cups. I'm gonna start with 6 cups in this bowl and then add more in as I need, so that way I don't add too many. All right, so I have my 6 cups in there, and then I'm just gonna wait for my yeast to bloom, and then we'll start adding in all of our other ingredients. Okay, so now that our 5 minutes is up and our yeast has bloomed, we are ready to add it in to our flour, and we need to add some salt and oil to our flour first. But first, it's important to bloom your yeast, especially if you have yeast that you've had for a while. This whole process will tell you if your yeast is still active. So it's best to do this than to mix up your bread dough and then discover that your yeast is no longer active. That would be very bad and a waste of a lot of ingredients. So to our flour real fast, we're going to add 4 teaspoons of kosher salt. And then we're going to go ahead and dump in our yeast. And if you guys don't want to mix by hand, you can use your stand mixer with your dough hook attachment. That also works well. And then we're also going to add real fast 4 tablespoons of, but I'm using vegetable oil, but you can use olive oil or any oil that you'd like. We'll go ahead and start mixing this with a spoon, but once it gets to the sticky point, I'm going to switch to my hands. And I will have to add more flour because, like I said at the beginning, I was only starting with 6 cups. Whenever my recipe, since I doubled it, it should be like 8 to 10 cups, but we'll add as we need. That way it's not too much. All right, so we're starting to get to where it's very sticky, but it's coming together well. So now I'm going to switch to my hands, but first, if you're wearing any jewelry, take that off. You definitely don't want your jewelry all gunked up. And I do need more flour. So I'm going to add in another cup. And if you flour your hands as well, you have a less likely chance of sticking. Go ahead and scrape your spoon off. And then you're just going to take your hands in there and keep mixing it, going all around the whole bowl. We need to add some more flour again. So with my cleaner of the 2 hands, I'll get me another cup because you can see it's sticking really bad at the bottom. So we're going to pour mostly at the bottom there to start with. And that helped a lot to help scrape that up off the bottom. And our dough is, sorry, my bowl popped. Our dough is starting to come together a lot better now. So I will switch to the counter here in just a minute. I want to make sure to rub down all the sides of my bowl. That way I'm not leaving any little bits behind. All right. Clean off my hands a little bit. I am gonna add just probably a fourth of a cup of flour down on my counter, just so we're not sticking to it. And we're gonna take our dough, scraping out all of the leftover inside bits. And now you're just gonna keep kneading your dough. And that's just taking a side, pulling it in, pushing it down, and going all around the dough. And you wanna do this until you get a nice tight form ball, adding in any flour as you need along. And the much cleaner way of doing this would be in a mixing bowl, like a KitchenAid mixer with the dough attachment, but you get a workout in this way and that counts your calories for eating the bread, right? So I just sprinkle a little bit on top and a little bit more at bottom every time I feel like it's getting sticky again. That way we can get the nice ball shape going. All right, this is the exact consistency I look for. You're able to stretch and pull it quite a ways before it will eventually break. And then also to test it, I just kind of do this on all the sides. And if it's not sticking to my fingers, then I know that it is good and ready. I'm gonna give my bowl a quick rinse along with my hands, and then I'll show you what I do from here. Okay, so now that we got our bowl all cleaned out, I just didn't want any flour residue in there to stick to make it more difficult, because our next step, we're gonna add in some oil. How much oil you use depends on the size of your pan. My pan's very large, so I'm gonna use probably about a tablespoon. Another thing that you can do instead of using this is Pam, but you're just gonna get in here with your hands and spread that oil all over. And this is just because whenever your dough is in its first rise, it is going to obviously rise up and stick, and we don't want it to be stuck inside the bowl whenever it's time to take it out later. And my dough has become quite large, so I'm going to use this scraper, scrape it all up. I'm going to knead it one last time into a tight ball. And then from here, I'm going to start with it face down. I start with it face down and just give it a little spin. This helps get some oil on the top of your dough. And whenever we cover it, that'll help it not to stick to the plastic wrap. That's what I choose to use to cover my dough with in its rise. You can also do a towel, but sometimes I find that if you aren't there right away whenever the proofing starts, that it will rise up and stick to your towel. So we're gonna get this covered up, and then we're gonna set it in a warm spot. Generally on the stove is good. I do on my stove, and then I leave my range lights on. That way there's a little bit of heat. If it's colder weather, sometimes I will stick it in my oven with just the oven light on and the door shut, and that provides enough heat for this to rise. Okay guys, so it's been about an hour and a half and our dough has risen very well. So what you're looking for is that it doubles in size, and this is more than doubled in size. So now we're gonna punch it down and just take the dough and fold it all back in. Let's reflour our work surface. We're gonna take our dough out, put it, oh, I forgot to take my ring off. Don't wanna get it all doughy. So we're gonna fold it all in, get us a nice tight dough ball. Should look something like that. And since I doubled my normal recipe, I'm gonna end up with 4 loaves. Normally you would just split it down the center if you're gonna do the single recipe. And then you would knead from there, but I have to do half again since I'm making 4 loaves technically. And for this video, I'll only be baking 1, and the other 3 loaves, I'm going to be making something else called pepperoni bread, and you can click the link above at the end of the video to watch that. And you just want to make sure that these are pretty even. If you want complete accuracy, you can get out a kitchen scale and measure them. I just go based on how they feel and the size of my hands. So you're just going to take each corner of the dough, kind of pull it in to make a nice ball. And then what I do is I take one side and I fold it in, the other side fold it in, and just kind of make them squeeze together, marry them together. And then you want to make sure that it's a nice tight ball. And you shape it more, this time you shape it more into like a loaf of bread. And then you're going to take your bread loaf pan, give it a spray with some oil again, and just set it right in there. And I'm going to do that 4 times, even though I'm only going to be baking just one of the loaves. All right, so these are going to need covered again, and we'll need to do a second proof for about 30 minutes or until they have doubled in size. It's very important that you spray the tops of your saran wrap, that way the dough doesn't stick. So what I do to make this a little bit easier on myself is I lay it down, I'll spray, and then I will pick it up and flip the sprayed side back over to the top of the dough. And just keep it covered. And repeat the same thing with the next 2. Once again, you can, if you don't want to use saran wrap, you can use a cotton towel with some flour. That will also work. And then we just spray and flip it over so the sprayed side goes on top of the dough. And then again, I'm going to put these in, not in the oven. I'm going to place them on top of my oven for about 30 minutes to do a second rise. So now that the dough has risen again in a second time for the 30 minutes and it is nice and filling up the whole pan, you want to put it in your oven to bake. You want to preheat your oven though while this is rising to 350 degrees, and then we're going to bake it anywhere from 30 to 35 minutes. For my oven, I found that the magic number for it being good is 31 minutes. You'll know your bread is done whenever there's the nice golden brown top. We're just going to go ahead and take that out of the hot pan. And then you can use either a brush to brush the top, or just stick your hands in some water and rub it right on the top. You want to make sure you have cold water for the hot bread because it creates a nice steam effect. And then you're going to take your towel and cover it up and trap that steam, and that's what's going to give you a nice soft loaf. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And I'm just going to reuse my saran wrap from earlier. There should be 2 on here. Yep. Never mind. I won't reuse my saran wrap. I'll just get new. No, you can edit that part out. I'm struggling.